Tonight we're going to make some some birria tacos with, but not beef ones. We're doing pork birria tacos with huevos rancheros and a fruit salad. So something kind of easy, simple. So I actually started prepping this up a couple hours ago, and I did it in my Instapot because I find it's the best way to make it nice and soft and tender. So we're gonna we have our beautiful sauce in here with our pork. I'm gonna just take that off so that steam can come out. And while we're waiting for that to just cool off a little bit, let's saute up our onions right now for our huevos rancheros, which we're actually gonna be using a little bit of our birria sauce, or I always say it wrong, birria, yeah, I'll stop attempting. We're gonna use a little bit of that in our huevos rancheros because they actually have a lot of similar spices and seasoning in it. So when I was making the base for our tacos tonight, I added in ancho chili powder, chipotle chili powder, cumin, coriander, a little bit of taco seasoning, and some like beef broth, tomato paste, diced tomatoes, diced onions, and we kind of let that kind of in our Instapot and on the high pressure cooking setting for about 3 hours. And we're gonna blend the sauce up here in a little bit, and that's what we'll dip our tortilla in to make our birria tacos here. But it will be delicious. Okay, let me add a little bit of olive oil into our saute pan here so we can start sauteing up our onions. We want them to get nice and caramelized. And then I have some peppers that I picked from my garden that we're gonna throw in here, as well as some tomatoes and then our sauce. But I do wanna get these started. Let me grab some tongs here so we can just kind of coat these onions up. And I have it cooking over about a 7, so a medium-high heat. Okay, now it's time to fish out our meat and get our sauce pureed up. So this is our lovely pork. This is just a kind of a Boston roast, a Boston butt roast, and it should be lovely and tender, and it's kind of cooked in this nice sauce. There we go. And I try to make my birrias a bit more mild, so it's not super spicy. It will definitely have lots of seasoning because we use chili powder in it, but we didn't use any crazy spicy, peppers or cayenne or chili powders like in there. I'm gonna get all of this pork out. That way we'll have this to put inside our taco. And then we're gonna put our rest of our stuff in our blender so we can give it a quick puree. Let me get another little bowl out here for our big bone in here, just so I can remove it now. And this is from our roast. There we go. So we've got our pork here. That should be excellent. It should be nice and tender and perfect to go. And then we're gonna blend up our sauce. Again, I added in a whole diced onion in here, garlic, about a tablespoon of garlic, a can of diced tomatoes, lots of different chili powders, ancho, chipotle, and regular. We're gonna put it all in here. We're gonna blend it up. It's okay if there's some chunks of meat, but this is essentially the consommé that you're gonna be blending up for it. Here we go. Just take my Instapot out of the way here to clear up my little workspace. And after we blend it up, I'm going to ladle a little bit over our meat. But I do want to make this a nice kind of puree because we're going to be using this in our, to season up our huevos rancheros as well. So I'm going to put this on our soup setting so it will puree nicely. But I want it to be a very smooth but delicate kind of sauce. There we go.
You have a question. Do you prefer this over carne asada?
I love carne asada. It's delicious. They're very different. And so I like to just change it up every now and then. Carne asada is more like, you know, your steak that you've seasoned up well and good. So this is just a different kind of meal that's got some similar flavors to it, but to change it up so we're not eating the same stuff all the time. Here we go. I'm going to just break some of these onions apart. Perfect. There we go. And then while these are continuing to cook up, I'm going to start kind of do a nice little dice up on our peppers. So I picked these two from my garden, compliments of Jack today. I went out there to pick tomatoes, and then he saw that I had peppers, and he decided to pick them. So I was like, let's use them. And luckily, they're pretty good sized ones. These are just green bell peppers. You know, the funny thing is when I bought them, they were supposed to be purple bell peppers. When I planted them, I bought 4 plants. None of them were purple. So I'm pretty sure they were not purple bell peppers. Even though they had this beautiful picture of these gorgeous purple bell peppers, I was bamboozled. Which is funny because I always say green bell peppers are my least favorite of them all because they're the most bitter tasting. And I love typically, you know, the yellow, the orange, and the red and purple when you can get it because they have a more mellow flavor. We're going to do a nice little dice up on our peppers, although I will say they've got a great texture. They're nice and crisp and fresh. Probably because of Jack's sweet nurturing of my garden. There we go. And I'm not doing them terribly small because I like them to have a little bit of a chunk kind of base to it. I was kind of deciding what sides I wanted to do with tonight's dinner. And I was thinking about doing like a street corn or a succotash, but then I ended on huevos rancheros because it's just delicious. Okay, we've got our onions are toasting up nicely here. In just a second, we'll add in our peppers. And I am going to save just a few of these diced up peppers to throw in our salsa. I've picked some fresh tomatoes from my garden and we're going to make a nice pico with that, and as well as some guacamole and then a fruit salad, using up all of the remaining bits of fruit in my fridge because I'm going to be grocery shopping tomorrow. This whole week I've been like trying to cook out of everything and use up a bunch of stuff before I go and restock. I always like to once or twice a month, typically I try to go through and I use up everything that I've put in my pantry or like my freezer or bits of stuff. Just kind of a great way to clean it out and get a little bit more creative with meals because you have less choice in it because you have limited options. There we go. So I'm going to save just a small, like 1/4 of a cup of my peppers over there. We can toss these guys in and let them start to saute. Beautiful. I'll mix those in just a second. But I do want to take a ladle of our sauce here, which should have a good amount of fat in it because, again, this is our pork roast that we made a consommé, so it's kind of like a fattened sauce with it, but it's got all that natural fat from our pork in there. Now, typically, birria tacos are made with beef, like a chuck roast. But I decided to do it a little bit different today because I had a pork roast. There we go. So I'm just kind of breaking it up. I did put about, you know, a ladle full of that sauce in there. I don't want it to be too soupy because we are going to be stuffing this inside our tortillas and we'll be toasting them up. We're just going to kind of shred them apart. This was cooked, we did it in our Instapot for 3 hours on the high setting to get this really tender base. And I will say my roast was a little bit frozen when I put it in there, knowing that it was going to cook up in time. Okay. We're just going to give our peppers a quick little toss in here. Beautiful. We're going to let them saute a little bit before we add in our tomatoes and then some of our birria sauce. Let's get our queso fresco because we're going to be using this for our stuffing the insides of our tacos.
You got a question? What cut of meat is that?
This is just a Boston butt roast. So it's just a pork roast and picnic roast. Essentially, they're all kind of like the same on there. They're lovely, especially when you do them in like an Instapot. A lot of times I'll do like pulled pork this way, so I don't have to slave over the smoker outside all day because I can put it in and forget about it. Which is kind of nice when I have a busier sports day with the kids. Getting my queso fresco out, or also known as crumbling cheese. And we're gonna crumble this up. So I'll start with half. The nice thing about this is you just have to give it a couple of good pinches and it's gonna break up, and then we'll be putting this in our little tacos.
How long was the meat cooked for?
3 hours on the high pressure cooker setting. You could also make it go slower and do it for, about 6 hours on the low pressure cooker setting to get the nice and tender bits of it. Now, my meat was partially frozen. If I'm using a roast that's already completely thawed, then 2 hours in the high pressure cooker setting works just fine as well. You don't want to go too much over because after a while your meat can then get mushy if you cook it for too long. So I always say if it's frozen, 3 hours is perfect. Already de-thawed, 2 hours at the high. There we go. So let's break up our cheese. That way we'll have this ready to put into our little tacos here. I'll take my sauce off. Turn off my thing. And I'm gonna wash my hands because we got a little bit of cheese crumbles here. And let's give these a quick toss. And I will say those onions smell absolutely lovely for it. Now we're gonna go into our sauce 1 second, but before we do that, I just want to put a little bit of garlic in here real quick to saute it up. And then we'll start working on our tacos here. I'm gonna put about a teaspoon. We'll let it saute up in the middle of it just for a couple of seconds. Now here we have our lovely, this is our Birria sauce. Again, this is just all of the juices with the diced tomatoes, tomato paste, and onion, and all the spices. I'll run those through really quickly. So I put in about a teaspoon of each of these spices. Oregano, ancho chili powder, regular chili powder, chipotle chili powder, coriander, garlic salt, and 4 bay leaves, about a tablespoon of garlic, and 1 whole onion diced up. So there's a lot of great stuff in here, and about a tablespoon of, I'd say a teaspoon and a half of vegetable bouillon and a teaspoon and a half of beef bouillon. And so it's gonna have this lovely flavor to it. Now the fun part about, which makes this a little bit messy, about making our tacos is you actually dip your tortillas in the sauce and then we'll toast them up. So it's a different method. This gives you that kind of orangish color of our taco, but they're going to be delicious. I'm going to turn on my skillet here and we're gonna let it go. I'm gonna mix in, now that my garlic's nice and toasted up, we're gonna mix it into our onions here. Here we go. And then before we add our sauce, a little bit of our sauce in here for our huevos rancheros, I'm gonna add in some diced tomatoes. Okay. So I've got 2 good-sized tomatoes. We don't need a whole lot of tomatoes since we are going to be adding in some of our sauce already. So we're just gonna dice them up and then we'll add them in there. And it doesn't have to be a super perfect dice. This isn't a salsa. They're gonna cook up anyways. There's one. And then we'll give it a nice little mix up. Go. And these are just vine ripe tomatoes. You could use Roma tomatoes or really any type of tomatoes. Just make sure your tomatoes aren't too past their prime where they get a bit mealy. because then they get more mushy versus hold their form when you kind of saute them up. There we go, and then we're gonna mix these guys in, let them saute for a second. Beautiful. Okay. Perfect. We're gonna let those sit right there while we're waiting for that. I'm gonna grab out a cutting board because honestly, this is the best way is just to pre-dip a bunch of my tortillas so that I'm not having to go in and out and get like drip everywhere for it. There we go. I'll move my ladle over here to the side. And I'm simply just going to dip it in. And it doesn't need a whole lot. And we're just gonna lay there. So I'm just gonna pre-dip ours. And this is going to give great flavor to our tacos. And they're not going to be soggy because we're gonna crisp them up on our pan. But this is how they kind of get really infused with that flavor. And they have, again, that nice kind of orangish red color. But this Birria sauce has, or it's also called a consomme because it has that natural fat in it, allows the tacos when you heat them up to really crisp up, which just makes them lovely. Now, you see, I'm just dipping them in. I'm not soaking them. You don't want to leave them in there too long because, again, you just need a quick little dip. So I've got my first kind of batch here that we can start kind of toasting up. And that's why I said it's easier to get a couple prepped and then do it than to try to do one at a time. So we're gonna add in our meat. Now you can also, I'm gonna do mine on the skillet, but you could also do these in the air fryer, like in your oven on convection bake or the air fryer setting. And they crisp up wonderfully as well. So we'll just hold that. And then I'm gonna put mine right on here. I don't need to add any fat or oil to this because, again, the sauce has already that natural fat from the pork. We're gonna add a little bit of our queso fresco here. We'll fold it over. And we'll put it over here to start kind of toasting up. I think I can do 3 at a time. Get our pork. And now traditionally it's done with like a chuck roast, but you'll get a lot of the same flavors in there, just a lighter meat instead of as a richer of a meat. Let's see. So let's get these first 3 ones and then I'll have my next 3 prepped and ready to go. We will be toasting them on both sides of our the tortillas so they crisp up nicely. There we go. Got our next one down. Good sprinkle and a fold. And this sauce, again, has all of those great flavors from all the different chili powders in it and oregano and bay leaves. It's just wonderful. And so we've got these. I'm going to turn this. Let me go wash my hands real quick. There we go. And we'll let those kind of crisp up. Give these a stir. And then we're going to add in a couple ladles of our Birria sauce because that is going to be our seasoned base. Because I don't need to reuse all my spices because I'm not going to be using as much of my the whole sauce on this dish. So it's a great way to kind of use because you do have a lot of sauce. Now this sauce, you can freeze it down and save it for another day for a quick version. If you had some shredded chicken, you could use it. We're gonna do a couple ladlefuls. I want enough to kind of submerge our veggies that we have sauteed up in here, but it doesn't need to be all the way.
You have a question. Does that cheese melt stringy?
It doesn't melt stringy. It melts in kind of like, it doesn't stretch like a typical, like a cheddar cheese or a mozzarella does. It kind of just melts kind of into like a crumble melted that way. But yeah, you're not gonna get the great cheese pull on it. It's not like the quesadilla cheese. Let's string those. But you can really, I'm using queso fresco because I have it. If you are a cheddar person, you could totally use cheddar or Kobe Jack or you know, queso blanco. Really, whatever cheese preference you are. Some people really, like typically when we eat tacos, we really love like a good cheddar cheese. I know it's not the common one to have with it, but it's just our preference. There we go. Getting these. They're starting to toast up. Beautiful. Once my skillet gets nice and hot, it always takes a hot minute. Same thing when I'm making homemade naan or tortillas. Once it's nice and hot and toasty, then these will cook up and crisp up much faster. Let me grab a small spoon. I want to taste it, see if I need to add anything else to this. And then we'll start working on our guacamole and our pico and our fruit salad. Delicious. I might add a little bit of salt. We did add a bunch of vegetables in here, so I want just a little bit. So I've got a little bit of garlic salt, and we'll add our eggs in here in just a little bit. What we're going to do is we are going to crack our eggs into this. We'll put the lid on, and it's going to steam cook them for our kind of our huevos rancheros. Let's see. And then I have some green onions as well that will probably top over it. Better. Okay. See how? Just a bit, we're getting there. I don't want to put them too high because I don't want to burn them. So once our skillet's nice and hot, I've got it at about a medium, then they'll be perfect. Let's pop that cheese in there. And let's prep up. I'm going to get 2 bowls. We're going to prep up our guacamole and our pico.
You have a question? Using any beans tonight?
No beans. I am not a big bean person. And I really only have one kid in my family that actually likes beans. And that's my oldest daughter. I don't know where she got her love of refried beans or whatnot. But I do not like them. And I'll say 6 out of 7 don't like them. So she can get them when we go to a Mexican restaurant. You know, I don't mind beans in soups or whatnot, but refried beans or just a plain bean is just not my cup of tea. Okay, perfect. Let's flip these over. So now we've got this nice kind of crispy edge on there. So I'm gonna flip these. Beautiful. I think this one needs a little bit more, so I'm gonna toast it on there. But I'm waiting for a nice crunch on it is what I want. And set that right there. Okay, we've got our peppers in here. For pico, I'm going to be using, I've got some yellow tomatoes from my garden. They finally turned from green. They've been, you know, I picked them, well, I will say Jack picked them a couple days ago when they were a little bit spotted, and now they're good now. We had them ripening on the counter. He's such a good helper. He goes out there, and I swear he makes, every time we go outside to play, he goes straight to my garden boxes, and he's like, what can I pick today? He does. And today we had one, and I was like, you can have this one. And he walked around outside the whole time. He had this tomato in his sandbox, and then he had it everywhere. He took bites out of it, and every time he took a bite out of it, he spit it out because he does not like tomatoes. But he was going to keep trying all day. And I was like, as long as you only touch this tomato, I'm happy.
Do you ever use pickled onions?
Yes, I love a good red pickled onion. And I thought about making some pickled onions to go with this because those flavors work really well. Except I was out of my red onions. I have just enough onion. I need to go to the store. As I tell you, I'm using up. But this is all that I have left, which isn't enough to really do a batch of pickled onions, because if I'm going to make them, I'm going to make a big batch so I can keep some in the, you know, like the fridge in a jar. Okay, these are crisping up beautifully. Let me flip this guy over, and I'm going to get a plate to take these 2 guys off because they are ready. but they've got nice kind of toasted edge on them. But they've got that cheese and that sauce. So it's like, again, I always say they're not going to be soggy, but they're gonna have all of this great flavor in the shell, which just makes them absolutely amazing. And it's not too difficult to do. So I'm gonna put our next batch up here. I'm gonna turn this down just a smidge to a 4. Now that my skillet is nice and hot, you can actually hear it. Every time I put a piece of taco down, it starts to sizzle. Beautiful. So let's get this one. So we'll have 2 tomato colors in our salsa. Now, and then I'm gonna make my guacamole. And my guacamole is a little bit different from most. I keep it really plain and simple in that I don't add any onions or tomatoes or peppers. I keep it I keep it avocados, garlic, salt, and lime. Really, really simple. And I always make pico, so if you want to have that extra in it, you can mix some of your pico into your guac. But I found that my kids just really love it plain. Just like you get from like, you know, a cheap Mexican restaurant where it's just the avocado with the seasoning. That's how we like it. Okay, so I've got our tomatoes and our peppers in there, and I'm gonna use some of our small little batches of our red onion here to go into our pico. There we go. Before I mince them, let's give our tomatoes a quick stir. I'm letting them stew for a little bit, and then we'll add our eggs in. I don't want to add our eggs in too soon because I don't want them to overcook. There we go. Perfect. Oop, losing a little bit out of there. Tuck it back in. Beautiful.
Yo, question, any good Mexican restaurants nearby?
There are a lot. We live outside of Nashville, and Nashville, I feel like in the recent years, since I was a kid, has really become a good foodie place. Apparently it's also Bachelorette Party USA, which I could do without. But there actually are quite a few good Mexican restaurants here. With that, now I will say, when we go out, a lot of times we just go to this really cheap local one near us because they're quick, they're fast, and our kids are happy there. And when you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, time is not on your side. It is literally everyone eat as fast as you can on there. But I will say there is a lot of great ones, and there was this one we went to a couple years ago, my husband and I. It's called Sopapillas. And it was so delicious. It was a boozy, fancier one, and it was amazing. But most of the time when we do our like bougie little date nights, I feel like we pick either, I want to say we typically pick like an Italian type restaurant or a French. I'm not sure why, because I love pasta. Which is funny because my husband's the exact opposite. He does not like pasta. But luckily all of my kids are like me and they love pasta, so he gets outvoted. Okay, these are going to be ready in just a second. Let's finish up our salsa over here. So I'm going to add in our red onions. I'm going to mince them up nice and small. Now you want to use a red onion on this because you could use a white onion as well. I like the red, it's a little bit sweeter there, but white onions have a nice like strong flavor to it, which is great for salsa. So don't use a yellow onion or, you know, like a Valdalia or sweet. Those are much better cooked up. Stick with either a red for a more mild and sweeter onion flavor or a white for that really like peak flavor to it. Okay. Got this nice and low. And we're gonna add in, we've got some green onions here. We're gonna add a few green onions into our pico, and then I'm also gonna save some to go into our huevos rancheros. There we go. So we'll just do a quick little dice up, then we're gonna make our guacamole. Which I still remember when guacamole and avocados became really big. It was like the late 90s, early 2000s. That was when it started to become a big thing here. But growing up, I used to always go during the summers and visit my grandparents. They had a house in Spain. It's kind of where they retired to. And right next to their house was this avocado farm. And if the avocados had fallen on the ground, you were allowed, like the farmer lived there, he was like, you can have them, just don't pick them from the trees. So of course we'd always go for our walk, and if there was avocados on the ground, we would make sure to grab them, and we had fresh avocados with almost like a pico de gallo stuffed in them, as well as guacamole. They were so good, and I just remember eating that all the time. And then guacamole started to get really, really big here in the U.S. And it started to become really, really popular. But I felt like, and I don't know, maybe if it was just I was a kid, but I don't remember it before the late 90s, the early 2000s. Like, I don't remember anybody eating it as a kid, unless it was in like that 7-layer bean dip. There we go. Let's get our next batch up and toasting up here. Get my tongs. So we'll whip up, we'll make like a nice little factory line here. Spread these out. Now you could also do these like straight up like a quesadilla as well, and just kind of do, like 2 tortillas on top of each other. I always feel like they call that the Birria pizza. Here we go. We're gonna get a nice little sizzle as soon as we put it on, because our skillet is nice and hot. And I'm pretty sure I can get all 4 on here. And again, you don't want your skillet to be too high. So I have mine at actually like a 2 right now, 2.5. So that it doesn't burn it, but it will toast it up and make it nice and crispy and delicious. Okay, I'm gonna crack my eggs in here so they can start cooking up. I don't know if I'm gonna fit all of my eggs in here, but I just grabbed a bunch out of the fridge. And we're just gonna cook it, kind of just like the Turkish eggs that had a moment, I feel like, earlier this year. We're just gonna crack them into the sauce, and then we'll cover this with a lid and we'll let them cook up. And we'll sprinkle some of our cheese over this as well. And if you had cilantro, that would be great as well. Oh, I might be able to get a good amount of these in here. I think I get 1 more. Perfect. Okay. I'm gonna turn this up to about a 3 now. I don't want to get them super hot. And I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of our cheese as well.
You have a question? What is this called?
Huevos rancheros. So we've got sauteed up onions, tomatoes, peppers in here. We've cracked our eggs into it. I'm throwing in some queso fresco. We're gonna put our lids on so we can cook up our eggs. We use some seasoning, a little of our Birria taco sauce left over because it has a lot of the same similar flavors in it, which will make it very lovely. And it's just a great way to reuse, the same components. So you're not having to use as much spices in it. Beautiful. Now again, to make this faster, now I'm cooking for, got my whole family for, and we're a bigger family, but you can definitely do this on either the convection bake or the air fryer setting. After you dip them, you just lay them all in there and you can bake them up at one time, which works really well as well. Okay, let's get our guacamole going. So I've got 3, and these are like huge avocados. So we're gonna whip these guys up. And we'll make our lovely guacamole, because you gotta have guacamole when you have Mexican food. And if your avocados are nice and ripe, you should be able to separate your skin fairly easily from the avocado flesh, which makes it a lot easier for mashing up. And if you want to do the pretty cutting, that's how they do it. They, separate it and then they slice it up nicely, and then they can spread it up across your like avocado toast. Now I like to mash my, for my guacamole, I use a fork to mash it because I find that it gives you that great texture. I don't like a whipped guacamole. I don't like it to be too smooth. I like a little bit of texture in it, but I don't want big chunks either. So I find the happy medium is just using a fork to mash it. Here we go. So we've got our avocados in there. And then I'm going to grab a fork here. We're going to squeeze some fresh lime juice over it, and we're going to mash it up. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of lime juice over our salsa as well, and then we'll add our garlic salt. Let me grab my little juicer here. Ooh, got a little lime juice in the eye. So I don't need a whole lot in here. The rest we're going to go in here. We're going to use about, almost a whole lime in our guacamole. I always put more in there. This is going to help prevent the avocados from turning brown. And it's going to give you the nice citrus notes that you need in here as well. Keep it bright and fresh. And you've got to use fresh limes. Don't use the jar limes. And you really can't use a lemon. It's not the same flavor profiles. Lemons are much sweeter. Here we go. Beautiful. Okay, let me wash my hands since they're lining.
You have a question. Do you shop with a specific list in mind at the grocery store, or just pick whatever?
I like to go and pick what produce looks good, what proteins looks good, and what's on sale. Because right now, groceries, I swear, cost an arm and a leg and then some. So I'm always trying to find what looks good and what is reasonably priced on there. And I find that's a great way to help bring the grocery costs down each week, as well as making sure you're eating like what's in season and what's kind of the best on there. So most of the time, I very rarely have something in mind. I'm really terrible about it. All the time people will be like, what are you having? What are you making for dinner? What are you making for lunch? Most of the time I have no idea what I'm making until like 30 minutes before, unless I've done something in like a slow cooker, like a Instapot or a roast that I have to prep ahead. Again, it's like what I go through, see what I feel like for the day, or if none of my kids are like, can you make that? And so I always have, I will say, I have a very loaded pantry. Like I have lots of staples around. I always have carrots and onions and celery and potatoes and tomatoes. So I always have these base ones, and then I have a ridiculous amount of spices so that you can kind of go with anything. And then I always have like rice and pastas and, so I can really make anything that I want to. And I feel like it gives me a little bit of freedom because I have so many options to cook with things. But then I think it drives my kids and my family insane sometimes because they'll be like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, I don't know, food. You'll like it. It'll be good. And it'll be like right before I'm about to eat. And I'm like, I don't know yet. Let me go look in the fridge and see what's calling my name. And that's how I decide. This came to me because I needed to go shopping and I didn't want to go today. So I was like, let's cook what we have in our freezer and we'll use it up. So I had a shoulder roast and I was like, we haven't done like tacos in a while, and then I decided Birria Tacos because I had the stuff to make it, and that's how it was done. I always have avocados too. Okay, let's get this guy on here. These are our last kind of batch. We always have extra meat too for the kids who just want to eat it up straight. Let's look at our eggs here. We're cooking up fairly good. We're starting to get them nice. I'm going to rotate this, put our lid back on. I'm going to turn it up just a smidge more. And then we can work on our salsas and then make our fruit salad, and then we'll be ready to serve up. We're gonna add a little bit of garlic salt.
Do you have a question? What type of pan is that? Flat pan?
That is the Hexclad griddle pan. I absolutely love it. I almost didn't buy it, but when I bought my 3-pack of Hexclad, they offered it for like an extra bonus deal. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll try it out. I love it because I use it for pancakes, crepes, grilled cheeses, naan, crisping up my tacos here. It's a really great pan. It's got this nice it has a little bit of a lip so you don't have to worry about things running off, but you can really easily slide your spatula under it, and it works really well for electric stoves. A lot of times when you get griddle pans, they're those big long rectangles that have to go over 2 burners, which if you have an electric stove, very rarely do you have 2 same size burners right next to each other. They like to give you some crazy configurations. And it just doesn't work as well. So I love having it that it only takes up 1 burner, and it does work really well, and it's non-stick, so I have to say, I love it. I do have it in my Amazon storefront because it is one of those pieces that I do love a lot. Okay, we added our garlic salt and our lime juice to our avocados. I'm using my fork to mash it up. Again, I don't want a super smooth texture. A little bit of a chunk I think works well for it. It gives you just those lovely flavors. And that fresh lime juice is gonna help keep it nice and green. Grab a spoon here. We've got our pico here. We have our yellow tomatoes, red onions, green peppers, and some green onions. If I had fresh cilantro, I would throw it in there. We have a squeeze of some fresh lime juice and some garlic salt. So pretty simple, but delicious. And these will be great to honestly eat on your little Birria taco here. Let's see how we're looking on these. Looking pretty good. I'm gonna flip them over. Beautiful. So we get that nice kind of crispy edge. And the nice part about this is those seasonings really cook into your tortilla, which allows them to really just remain wonderful. Okay, we are almost ready on our eggs here. We still have nice soft yolks. I'm gonna rotate this and let it steam up. So let's get our fruit salad done, and then we will be ready to serve up dinner. So, fruit salad today, we're doing really, really simple. I'm gonna actually just move these guys out of my way. Again, I said I needed to go grocery shopping, so we're gonna use up the rest of our hammy melon. So yesterday I cut up a hammy melon. If you've never had a hammy melon before, it tastes kind of like a honeydew, but it has a crunch like an Asian pear. We're gonna throw in some little cuties, some little clementines, and I've got some kiwis and some grapes. And once we've got this mixed up, looks like I lost part of my orange, we'll have it. It's like a green and orange fruit salad. Kind of got your nice little Halloween colors here going. Here we go. So we'll slide those in there, and then we'll check on our huevos, rancheros. What I want my eggs cooked to is I want the egg whites cooked all the way through, but I want my yolks still to be runny. So you don't want to forget about them for too long and then accidentally steam your yolks up all the way. But you want them to be firm, the whites to be firm, but the rest to be nice and runny. And this is the one that you can serve it on a crispy tortilla shell, which is what they do a lot in the restaurants. Or I'm gonna have it with our Birria Tacos.
You have a couple questions about, do the kids know what they're going as Halloween?
Yes. So we always do a family Halloween themed costume. Almost every year we've done it. And this year we are doing a DuckTales theme, which is, you grew up in the 90s, late 80s, you know what DuckTales are, and they actually have a resurgent recently. So we're doing a DuckTales themed. So my husband's gonna go as Darkwing Duck. I think I'm gonna go as Scrooge, because I really like the costume, and I was trying to figure out who I was gonna go. Then our 3 boys, So Jack, Torn, and Teddy are gonna go as Huey, Dewey, and Louie, the little mischievous ducks, which that's why I feel like Scrooge McDuck is perfect for me because I'm always getting on them. And Evie is gonna go as Webby, which is the duck like friend, and I think Lena is gonna go as her same name counterpart in the show, but they call it Lena, but it's spelled the same way. And she's like a half evil duck type thing, which really works with her personality on here. Okay, beautiful. So I'm gonna slide these guys off because I don't want them to cook anymore, but we've got our nice kind of, they're a little bit soft on there. You can kind of touch them and squish them down, but they're not cooked all the way through yet. And let me grab my knife here and let's get our salad going and we will serve up. So I've got my grapes. We're down to our last bunch on them. I wash them the day I have them, and that way the kids can just pick them off throughout the day. But we'll throw in our grapes and then we're gonna serve up our dinner. Got a couple kiwis that we're gonna toss in here and we'll be ready. It's like a pumpkin patch salad. And we get our kiwis. And it was one of those things where I was like, what should we do as I go through all of our menus? But it's nice. I always say, I always get really creative when it's one of those like, let me clean out what we have because it forces me to choose something slightly different because you have limited ingredients. But I always make fun meals with them. So they're always fun. It was always like those, you watch those kind of cooking shows growing up and they're like, you have $5 to use in this vending machine to get ingredients to make your meal, and you have to showcase it. And I always just like, the pressure, that's just crazy. I still remember this one guy, he had a Cheeto that he had to showcase in his dish, and it was interesting. He made like a Cheeto chicken thing. It was weird. Okay. Let's get our last little kiwi on here, and then we will serve up. Perfect. Okay, let me grab a plate. We've got our Birria Tacos right here, which will go great. We've got our mountain here, our huevos rancheros. And let me grab my plate. You grab a spoon. And let's serve up our dinner. Okay. Let me grab a spatula for our dish. Okay, so for dinner tonight, we will have our Birria Tacos that we slow cooked. These are pork Birria Tacos that we made a lovely Birria sauce using ancho chili powder, chipotle chili powder, regular powder, bay leaves, oregano, tomato paste, and we stewed it in our Instapot. We're gonna serve it with some homemade guacamole and pico de gallo as a delicious kind of dip on there. And then we used a little bit of our Birria sauce to make some huevos rancheros, where we sauteed up some onions, peppers, and tomatoes from my garden. That will have just this nice, this lovely seasoning from those chili powders. And then of course, we'll have our fresh fruit on the side as well for a nice, fresh, and delicious dinner made in no time. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made, and you can always watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my X-Life pans, my griddle pans, my knives, all the different gadgets and stuff I use in the kitchen for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.